Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this week's episode of the Working in Hockey podcast. I'm your host, Nick Bowens, and today I'm pleased to be joined by Abby Budgeon, currently the manager of brand activations and events at CCM Hockey. Abby, how are you doing this morning?
Good, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited to chat here. CCM, I think everybody listening to this knows the company and has seen a lot of the events that you have had your hands in the last couple of years, whether it be the CCM Hockey House or CCM 125, a lot of marquee events that you guys have been able to put on over the last couple of years. So I want to dive into that. But first, give the people a little overview of your role today and what you're up to day to day.
Yeah, so like you said, my title at CCM is the manager of the brand activation and events team, and we're a super fun, super cool part of the marketing department at CCM, where basically our goal is to be in front of consumers and in front of store staff to have different types of activations, whether they're the large ones like you referenced with Hockey House or our 125th year party that we just celebrated. Or participating in the Quebec Pee Wee tournament with a large activation, but really engaging with consumers and being out on the field and helping them interact with the brand, putting a face to the brand, and putting a tangible experience in front of them so that they fall in love with it even more. And it's an easy conversion when they want to go back to a store. They're like, hey, I tried this stick at this event. I really fell in love with it. I want to come back and buy it here. But on the flip side, we also do it with the store staff. So a fun part of my job is really making sure that they have all of the education and experience and on-hand knowledge that store staff need to be able to have a successful back to hockey sell-in season. So we run a large event called Spring Training Camp every May, where we do a coast to coast in the US and Canada, and my European colleagues do it in Europe as well. And basically our job is to educate as much as possible. So we host miniature little conferences in key cities where they get to come for the day. They have about 7 hours of training sessions that they sit through to learn like the products from top price point all the way to the bottom and all the tech and spec and hockey talk and lingo that they need to make it a successful season. And then they also get to go on the ice and try out all the gear. So some of the store staff get to try out sticks and skates months before we actually launch them. But we also find that that's fruitful and helpful for them to have a conversation with their customers and make it relevant, right? Like hockey is a very expensive sport to play. And unless you feel confident in the product yourself, you're not going to really feel confident selling it. So I have two fun sides of my jobs. Both of them revolve around activations and how can we make sure that store staff and consumers understand the product, understand the tech and spec, and have a good interaction with the brand is essentially the ethos of my job.
No, that's an awesome overview. And I think with events especially, timing's so important, obviously, like you said, but also I think people online or just in person, they see these events at the store, they see the hockey house, but they don't see or necessarily understand everything that goes into planning for those, like you said, educating the teams. And the one thing that I'll piggyback off there, you mentioned the team in Europe. CCM is a global brand. You have players from everywhere. You have players using your products everywhere. You're in stores worldwide. And I think with hockey, so many businesses are smaller businesses, very grassroots, and that's awesome as well. But CCM, it's amazing how global of a brand it is. Touch on kind of your global activations and how involved or strategic you guys have to be around the world, not just in local markets.
Yeah, so for sure we have to always consider what markets we're in globally, not just North America wise. Like we are located centrally in Montreal, so our global head office is the building I'm sitting in right now, which is in Montreal, Quebec. But we do have other offices in Boston, in Minnesota, in the U.S., and then in Europe we have a main office in Sweden. We have a sub office in Germany, in Finland, and then we have some offices over in Asia as well, more for production, obviously, but yeah, when we roll out our plans and roll out our activations, we do have to think from a global approach, and that does involve, including our European team and going, okay, we're making this program called Spring Training Camp. Is this applicable to the European market as well? Where sometimes also some of those bigger events like the World Juniors or with the IIHF tournaments that come, those can sometimes end up in Europe or other countries as well. So we try to be a global marketing team and try to think globally as possible. And working with my counterpart, Martin, over in Europe to do kind of the same thing. And he has a brand activation team under him so that we can really make sure that we're activating and penetrating at all opportunities, regardless if it's in, Germany or Canada or the US or let's say Taiwan for fun.
Yeah, that's super
Yeah.
interesting. And you touch on the brand activations team there. I know that you have people all across North America working with you there. We actually had helped share a role that you guys were
Yeah.
hiring for a couple months ago. So that was super interesting to kind of see the job description and understand a little bit more about that role. But talk to me about the structure of that. Where do you have people? How many people are on your team, etc.?
Yeah. So I have a team of six, actually, six brand activators. Three are in Canada and three are in the US. And then the European team has three in Europe as well. But for me, I take care of just the North America side of this. But we have basically a geography focused plan for our brand activators. So we're in those markets where you see a lot of hockey players, where you see a lot of hockey going on, hockey events. So for me in Canada, I have somebody in Montreal, Toronto, and now I have someone in Calgary. Thanks for the help on recruiting that. And then in the US, I have someone in Boston, someone in Detroit, and someone in the Twin Cities. So again, those cities that you think of, a lot of hockey being played, a lot of events happening, and their role is really to be the brand ambassador for that local city. Like we want them to be known as the CCM guy, so much so that they
Yeah.
even have CCM wrapped cars, which they get honked at all the time for and asked if we have free product for people. And it's a really fun job and a really great
Yeah.
entry level job right out of university for kids who are looking to get into hockey, because it touches on so many different parts of the business. They have to be product masters because they are going to be educating store staff, so they really have to understand and have a passion for understanding all of the technology that we pump into a stick or pump out of our skates or put into our goalie pads. But then at the same time, they have to have a really good understanding of their own backyard and territory. So if they've grown up in the region playing hockey and they understand all of the associations and how local hockey works and who the local stars are and the rising stars and the influential people in the market.
Yeah.
We always tell them to own the marketplace. And so those are kind of the two biggest things we always look at when we're hiring for somebody is understanding the tech and spec and having a retail background as well, because they are going to be working with the retailers directly, but then also having a passion for understanding your local market and really owning that and being the face of the brand in whatever city they're located in.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I think it's cool how involved with the product and like you said, in depth they have to know and go with that. I was very interested in that when I saw again the job
Yeah.
description there of people think of events as just people focused and you got to be out there and it's a little bit of sales, a little bit of marketing, but there's so much again behind the scenes and knowledge transfer that goes into a role like this. How did you first get into this kind of career path, Abby? What was your education? What stepping stones did you have along the way to end up here at CCM?
Yeah. So, education wise, I went to Brock University, and to a lot of people's surprise, I did not go to the sports management program. I actually went to the business school there. I always knew I wanted to be in marketing, so that was kind of an easy route for me once I got to university and started to kind of specialize my career path there. But basically, out of school, I applied to jobs all over the world, actually. I was not keen on staying in my GTA background if I needed to, but eventually I landed a job in Montreal with the Reitmans Group. And so I ended up working in retail fashion to actually start with. And I just, again, it was the marketing side of things that really drove the passion and my own retail background, knowing that I like the consumer mindset. I like the calendar of how retail works. And so I worked for the Reitmans Group, and then I worked for Le Bien Rose, all at their head offices doing different marketing strategy or partnership roles. And then COVID hit, of course, and took some time there to kind of figure out what was next. And what ended up being next after Le Bien Rose for me was working at Sports Excellence. And for me, the tie-in was the quick, easy, okay, I'm going to do general marketing as their marketing manager, but it's still retail. So I can still understand the retail side of this because that's what I've done for
Yeah.
4 or 5 years. And I can make that applicable and learn about sports versus learn about fashion and anything like that. I had played hockey before. I had played baseball, and Sports Excellence is a multi-sport group. Their stores sell, summer sports, winter sports, and all types of sporting gear in between. So it was definitely a learning curve to learn about what is, what is baseball versus softball, and what are the key differences in a glove for those two sports. Where
Yeah.
hockey I knew a little bit more of, skiing I knew a little bit more of, football I knew nothing about. So learning even football terminology and stuff like that. But I was there for about 2 years to cover as their general marketing manager. So doing things from email marketing to social media marketing to helping roll out programs across their 200 stores. And then it kind of slowly got to the point where I was realizing, I think I want to be a little bit more specialized. I think there are aspects of this that I really, really love. And then there are aspects of this where I'm like, you know what, touched it on it, dabbled in it. it's time for a change. And then I was lucky enough that since I'm located in Montreal, and when I saw the CCM posting and had a good relationship with CCM, thanks to my time at Sports Excellence as they're one of our vendors, it became a really natural and easy progression for me when I looked at the events job, and knowing that I had a good events background and a good events interest, and it kind of played to who I was. And so, yeah, when I read the post, I knew that job was for me, and I fully went for it. I went and interviewed, and I was lucky enough to be selected for it. And now it's been 3 years that I've been here.
That's great. That's great. And I appreciate the detail there. And I think one thing I'd love to hop on there that you mentioned is kind of through the sports excellence role there, that's when you decided to specialize a little bit more in what you were most interested in. I think a
Yeah.
lot of times people graduating or looking for that first entry level job, they want to be so specialized in something. And while that's okay, and you can definitely make it work, I think a lot of times, in my experience, and it sounds like in some of your experiences along the way, picking up a lot of those general skills, doing the email marketing to the social media to then events. You got to learn and see so many different sides of businesses, of retail, of marketing. Talk to me a little bit about kind of generalist roles versus then specializing in your experience with both.
Yeah. So when I started at Sports Excellence and when it was general, it was good because I already had a good background in doing some tasks. And when you start off your career at 22, 23, 24, a lot of the time, like you said, it is going to be more of a general role that you're going to find, because even though it says, marketing coordinator, that's a broad term if we're really
Yeah.
looking at it. Marketing is e-com, it's branding, it's graphic design, it's video production, it's social media, it's partnerships, it's sometimes sports marketing, it's sometimes at events or activations, or there's the whole retail trade side of things. So it really is a very, very broad term when you start off as a marketing coordinator. Not a lot of the time are you going to be pigeonholed into one specific thing. I think things that people find they get pigeonholed into right out of school, especially young people, is social media, just because they assume that there's always that connection there. So that's sometimes the early pigeonholing that happens to young workers. But for a lot of the time, you are going to have the opportunity to see a lot. And I would always encourage anybody starting off in their career to take that opportunity, because you don't know fully what you're interested in yet. It's kind of like university. When you start, you go into a business program, or for at least me, I went into a business program, and the specialization of my degree only happens in year 3 and year 4. So you take 2 years of general classes, you take finance, you take accounting, you take IT, you take marketing and operations,
Yeah.
and then you kind of figure out, okay, I don't like IT, I don't like accounting, I do like ops, I do like marketing. So let's start to explore what you like, and let's start to explore what you're good at and what you're passionate about, because it's a long life. It's a long life to have a career.
Yeah.
And, if you're not hopping around and trying different things, then you're not learning at the same time, if you're not gathering different experiences. But once you are ready to kind of pick a specialty, then it becomes a little bit more fun, because then you can start to really grow within that specialty and go, okay, this is how I'm going to focus on, and these are the learnings that I'm going to find. But you never, ever, ever lose sight of the generalist side of it, because you always have to be thinking about the other opportunities. I sit in a meeting once a week with all of the other marketing managers at CCM who are specialized, and we have a brand person, we have a trade person, we have a sports marketing person, we have someone who's in charge of our graphics studio, and someone who's in charge of our ecom. But never do I not understand what the conversation is going on around me, because I've had experience in
Yes.
multiple areas. So even though my specialty and my domain is the events and activation side, it's not like I can't offer my opinion on the ecom side, or say, hey, we tried this when I was at Reitman's. Maybe we could think about doing something like this. So, every experience adds value to your career, but I would also just say, don't close your mind to trying something that might seem a little obscure, or it might seem a little scary. Yeah, just try everything while you're young, and then you have time to figure it out.
Yes, absolutely. That's very well said. And I think, like you said, experience from every job can be useful and transferable, and you never know when it will pop up, and you never know what it
Absolutely.
may be. I'm definitely, it's interesting because I'm pushing these dream jobs to people, and you want to get in hockey, you want to get these roles. But at the same time, I find myself saying often, like, you need a job where you don't love everything that you're doing. You need to
Yep.
understand those things and identify what you're good at, and where you want to end up in those things. So I really appreciate the generalist versus specialist
Yeah.
conversation there as well. I'm bouncing around all over the place a little bit here,
No
but I did
worries.
want to touch on the bigger events that you guys have done with CCM. We mentioned the CCM 125. We mentioned the Hockey House. I was at the one in Toronto at the Rink of Dreams a couple years ago through my other brand, Hockey Collective, and spectacular event, and I think it's so cool. And I think the one thing that I wanted to ask you about there is you're able to touch so many different people. I believe when we were there, the first day was like all about influencers and social media, et cetera. And there's people from the league there. And then the next day there was camps for kids. And then the next day, some of the players were there. Talk to me about planning for an event of that size, when you start, what goes into it, and how you're able to consider and tailor it to all these different types and ages of people.
So yeah, that event is our mammoth of the year. It's our biggest one. We are in the process of actually planning the third iteration right now. So we
Okay,
haven't
cool.
announced the location yet, so I can't give you a sneak peek, unfortunately, into year three. But yeah, we've been successful with this event now for 2 straight years. Where the first one, you're right, was in Toronto at the Rink of Dreams. The second year, we actually held down in Boston, where we partnered with this family who had a similar rink and similar size house and setup, and were able to run an activation that was catered to the Boston community versus the Toronto community. And I think, when you look at what goes into this, this is a huge project. It takes about a year to plan this. Typically, well, first off, we do work with a marketing agency called Mosaic, who was
Yep.
the conceptual design behind Hockey House and who has helped carry us through. But it's a partnership between the two of us, right? So we bring a lot to the field. We bring different ideas and different ways of operations, best learnings, practices, and what we're looking to get out of the event and how to talk to our different target markets. And then they take it and make it logistically possible. They are the magic behind the curtain, who actually helped physically build this thing up and run it from day one. But we have a really great team, a really great working relationship with them. But typically, as soon as the Boston house was done, we started looking right away for the next house. We were like, okay, we know what city we want to be in. So where can we activate in this city? Is there a house? Is there a public spot? And what does the overall concept look like? We said that Toronto had to be flashy. It had to be big because it was our very first one. It had to feel um, grand and exciting and be a content factory so that we could have something to build off of for future years. Boston ended up being a very community driven one. We were not right in Boston, but we were in a small town called Canton, which is about 30 minutes, I want to say, west of Boston. But that family and that community really had this strong hockey collective, strong, community feel to it, where everybody knew everybody, and we were having kids run into the house because their neighbors wanted to come check it out and whatnot. And it was definitely a different feeling. You still felt like it was Hockey House, but you felt the different vibe. And so, the next one that we're doing, we're saying, and again, I won't tell you the city, but our theme is iconic. And so we turned 125 years this year, and we're an iconic Canadian brand and an iconic global brand when it comes to hockey. And so we want our house to represent that iconicness that we bring to the field of our sport. But yeah, it takes a year to plan. It kind of starts with the site visits and the look, the feel, and how we want this to be. And then from there, once we go into all the fun contract stuff is done and we found the place and we've secured the place, then it goes from a really, really high level of, okay, what can we put in this house? Are we working with partners? Are we focusing on what age groups? Are we focusing on community side of this? What community partners can we bring in? Are we bringing in players for this? Is there something that we specifically need out of the house to give that city that feeling that we're trying to mimic? And so we just crossed over that point a couple weeks ago, and now we're in the actual tactical. Okay, we've talked about it enough. We've had the feeling, we have the brief, we understand what we want out of the house. Now what does this look like? So we know where we're going. What does it tactically look like? Because we're going to have to start building out all of the different POP and merchandising spaces that are going to happen in this house. And if we want to go live in the winter time, which is always when we do this, then now's our time to do that. And then we get into a more executional phase a little bit later on, where we go, okay, here's everyone's job, and here's how, when you walk into this room, these are the talking points. This is how this should look and feel. This is what we want kids to get away from this and take away from this. And yeah, it's a lot of work. It takes about 25 people to run the house over the span of the 4 days. And as you kind of touched on too, it takes different themes each night. So typically we start with an influencer night, and then our Friday is kind of subject to change. We've done different Friday themes for the past two houses, and it'll be a different Friday theme this house too. Saturday and Sunday are our community days, where there are free tickets for people to grab. So typically we launch on our website saying, hey, if you're in this city and you want to come to Hockey House, grab your ticket now, and we'll see you at the house when it goes live. And we typically see about 600 kids come through on the weekend alone on Saturday and Sunday. And then we have a fun retail tie-in that we do with our retail partners. And this is something we started in Boston and we're carrying through to our next house too. But we do a 3-on-3 game where they have a chance to basically win an entry from their store, and some lucky kids are randomly selected and then travel to the city and they get to play in a 3-on-3 tournament. We have a Hockey House Stanley Cup as well that gets awarded, and some other prizes for the team that won. Last year when we were in Boston, we did it as a Team Boston, Team Detroit, and Team Toronto. So we had teams from each of those cities. And lo
Cool.
and behold, of course, Team Boston actually won on their home turf. And so it's cool because you have kids who don't know each other. And we put the age group of like 10 to 15-year-olds, and they quickly made their own little bond and got to celebrate this experience that it's a once in a lifetime experience. And
Yeah.
a lot of the kids exchanged phone numbers afterwards and kept in contact. So it was cool to see some lifetime memories being made in front of you. But yeah, it's a lot to plan, a lot to consider, and it doesn't happen overnight, but it takes a good team of probably 10 people to tactfully plan it and then about 25 to 30 people to actually execute it.
Wow. No, that's a very cool peek behind the curtain there into
Yeah.
all the madness and planning that goes into an event of that magnitude. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on there in terms of this role and kind of timelines, CCM, as any industry leader, is always innovating, always coming out with new products. You guys are launching new product lines, new product variations. Feels like all the time. How far in advance do you know about these new product launches? How far in advance are you planning your activators to be able to go and learn this material, inform the stores, etc., when a stick's coming out in a month or two, say?
So, like any company that launches products, we have a full calendar and a work back schedule for when people are involved in the product creation process. And we typically work with 3 years at a time. So, we're in 2024 right now. So, we're still in the XF Pro year, is what we call it, right? Where our skates and all of our protective gear has just come out. So, we're live in the sense that all of our plans are coming to an end. They're actually being activated upon and they're being executed. However, we just had our 125 party, which attached onto what we call our GMS, and our GMS is our time where we finally have closed the book on, okay, everything's ready to go for the next year, and we present all the plans to all of our sales associates, to my team who need to know about the product, and the rest of the company as well, who's involved in making sure that then now 2025 is going to be a successful year. So when we're looking at the next iteration of the JetSpeed family, and how does that roll out from all different standpoints of marketing or sales or operations and everything that's involved behind it. So when you're asking when does my team learn, they learned a couple weeks ago what those products are. They will need refreshers as they get closer to, because it's 8 to 12 months still away from those launches, but it is a year in advance that they get to start to digest that information, because then they have to take that information back and think, okay, how do I implicate the stores in what I just learned? How much of what I just learned do they need to know, or how can I make it translatable? So when we talk about doing spring training camp in May, we now work from August to May to make all that material at spring training camp, different presentations, different giveaways that we can give the stores to keep in their back pockets, to go, okay, here's the high level idea of what um, dual color feels like in a stick, and what does that mean down to a store staff, to a 16-year-old who's just on the floor on a Saturday. How can he explain that to a parent and like a 13-year-old kid? So we take a lot of time to do that, but then at the same time we're about to kick off internally our 2026 here. And so I get implicated a lot later just because of the nature of my job, but our brand team gets implicated a lot earlier. They'll start now along with our trade team so that they can start to make their plans for how 2026 will be spoken about from a brand standpoint and what that looks like physically in the retailer space.
Very cool. No, it's fascinating stuff between the education and the planning timelines for it. I could bug you for hours on that, because me as a childish hockey store consumer, I just walk in and say, "Oh, there's the stick that Austin Matthews is using. I'll try
Yeah,
that." But the amount of planning and education that goes into it far exceeds that consumer journey that I go on there. I
for
want to
sure.
wrap things up here, Abby, with some advice for people looking to end up in events, in marketing, maybe end up where you are one day. What career advice would you have for young professionals or recent graduates?
I think my advice would just be open to whatever might come. Like, you are not going to most likely find your dream job right out of school, because your dream job is probably a few stepping stones away from where you started. But like when we're speaking about the generalist versus specialist kind of thing, Be open to new experiences, be open to learning a lot about different aspects of different roles. I always say that your job description that you're reading on LinkedIn or whatever is only really 65% of what you're actually going to be doing. There is a good other 35% that you're going to be learning on the job or thrown into, that you don't know yet, and that's okay. It can be scary, but that's also okay, and it's going to broaden your horizons. It's going to allow you the space to really learn and to grow and to network. I know a lot of people focus on networking as well, and that's fantastic. But it's really hard to stand out when there are millions of kids graduating university every single year, and only a certain amount of jobs in hockey that seem to be attracting them. But at the same time, come to events or come to different marketing opportunities if that's what you're interested in, and meet them there physically. We had put a call out for some volunteers when we were doing something with the All Star tournament in Toronto, and we got lots of people. But now I have people on my radar and people who, if I were to hire in Toronto again, I
Yeah.
already know probably who I might pick because I've met some people. So yes, there is networking on LinkedIn, but don't undercount also the physical going to places where the brand's interacting and interact with them. If you're going to go to FanFest anyway when the All Star Games in Toronto, go and actually meet the brand yourself too. Don't just show up to the booth, have a beer, or have the fun, and then not say anything. Go meet the people working there. Ask them about their job. Ask them how they got their role, and yeah, just keep an open mind, and all the best to all the new graduates who who try for these fields. It's very competitive, but once you're in, you're really lucky and fortunate, and hopefully make the best of your career after that.
Yes, absolutely. There's a reason that we all want these cool jobs within the game that we love. But Abby, this has been fantastic. I can't thank you enough for your time. Tell the people where they can find you if they have any questions. LinkedIn or what's preferable for you?
Professional standpoint, definitely LinkedIn. I would hate to not give a shout out to our CCM socials as well, but follow us there because a lot of what my team and I end up doing does end up on our Instagram or on our TikTok, and is showcased through there too. So if you're ever interested to see where we are activating, if you want to come meet us at some of our events and stuff, keep an eye out on our CCM channels as well. So.
Perfect. Yes, in a couple months, guys, you will see an iconic couple of posts about the next hockey house. Abby,
Yep.
thank you so much. Guys, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.